So in this video, we're just going to be building this React.js autoplay slideshow. So we can go next, we can go previous, we can click on these radio buttons here. And if we wait, it'll start autoplaying. It's fully responsive, so we can go to the mobile version here. Do Control-0 to center it. And we can resize it. It resizes on the fly. Go back to desktop, resizes on the fly as well. And so if this interests you at all, stick around. Let's begin. All right, I have a React.js app up and running. I just took out all the unnecessary files, the icons and the testing files. So let's create some components, and then we're going to get to the actual coding of this thing. So we're going to need two components. We need a deck.js, and we're going to need a card.js. The card holds the image, and we're going to use style objects, but I'm just going to use a style sheet to normalize the canvas. So let me create a styles.css, and we'll do a body, we'll do a margin of 0, do padding of 0 as well. Let's do a width of 100 viewport width, a height of the same, but in viewport height. We'll do an overflow of hidden, and we'll do a background color of this this charcoal thing right here. So 1E, 1E, 1E. Save. Let's close that. Let's link that up to our app.js. So import./styles.css. While we're here, let's import the deck. Deck from ./components/deck.js. Let's use that guy right here. Okay, there we go. The deck is a class component. You take the default down here. Export default deck. And this guy uses the card, so let's import the card here. ./card.js. We need a constructor, or const. Okay, let's go to the card. Card is a function component. Let's take away the export default, and we're going to memoize this. Memoizing is just a way of making more efficient React default JS components.memo. And so when the parent of this card, which is the deck, this guy re-renders, if there's no state change in the child, this guy doesn't re-render, so it just prevents any unnecessary re-rendering of components. Makes more efficient code. Let's do a semicolon here. We need a props that we're going to use. Okay, let's go to close that app. Let's do this. These guys are going to use style objects. Let me get that started. Styles. Let's do that. And this guy's going to have a card and a card image object. Copy this. Let's go here. Let's go down here. Paste. This guy is going to have a viewport, and he's going to have a images container to hold all the cards. So let's get the scaffolding going, get the images, and then we'll apply the CSS. So what did I say for scaffolding? Let's do, before that, we're going to hold all the cards in an array in this state. All right, scaffolding. Let's surround all these guys in a fragment. We don't want any unnecessary fragments or divs, excuse me, on the page. So the first guy is going to be the viewport. The second guy is going to be the images container, and it renders all of the cards. So this.state.cards like that. Fragment is underlined because we need to import that module, the fragment. All right. This style comes from the viewport, styles.view_port. This guy is going to have a style of styles.imagesContainer. Let's head to the card. This guy. We don't need to wrap this guy in a fragment. This guy's style comes from card, so styles.card. And the image here, so let me just do an image. The source is going to come from the props, so props.pixum. Pixum is just a random image generating site. Alt will say OK. And the style is going to come from the styles.card_img and a unique ID for this guy. I might need to show you guys some stuff in the HTML tree later. Let's get that from the props as well. Props.id. Props.pixum, alt, good. All right, let's get some images on screen, and then we're going to center the images. So for this tutorial, we'll just do 3 of these cards. So card, Pixum, we'll do equals, and we'll do https://pixum photos. 800 by 350. What else did we say? We said there was an ID. We'll say 1 for this guy and a unique key for the array. 1 as well. That's 1 card. Let's do 2, 3. Let me close this. Why is this open? There we go. And I'm just going to modify the dimensions slightly. If you give the same dimensions to the Pixum site, it gives you the exact same images. We just want 3 different images. So I'm just going to do like a, I don't know, 2, let's see, 2. And we'll do a 3 here. Whatever, just modify the numbers. This guy's going to be a 2. This guy's going to be a 3. This guy's a 2 as well. And this guy's a 3. Alright, let's save and see what we get on the canvas. And we're going to do these guys here. Alright, so let's center these guys in the middle of the screen. And a lot of this code overlaps, so I'm going to copy and paste it for these styles. Margin 0, padding 0. We'll do a, let's do a height, or excuse me, width first. Still width, excuse me, of 500 pixels. And then we'll do a height of 300 pixels. 300 pixels. There we go. We'll do a position of absolute. Again, we're just centering these cards on screen. 50% left of the same. Why am I rewriting? I just do this. Left, scroll up just a bit. Let's do a transform of a translate. And we'll go negative 50%, negative 50%. And for the viewport, we need an overflow hidden. Save, see what we get. F5. And we're going to do some more styles here. Alright, so that's the 1 card. Let me turn off the hidden. Currently, the cards are still 800 by 350. They're not being resized according to these dimensions just yet. So let's turn off overflow. Let me copy this code here. Paste that here. The width is just going to inherit from the viewport. So inherit like that. This is how we make the thing responsive. So same thing with the height. Delete, delete, delete. Inherit. Absolute 50-50. That's good. Let me copy these. Let me save. Yank. Let's go over here. Paste that here. And paste that here as well. Margin, padding for image, do not need. Margin padding, good, 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 good. This guy, the max width for the image, the actual IMG HTML element. It's going to be a max height. And of course, it's just 100%. 100%. And relative. It's because all of these things, so this guy inherits its size from this guy, which inherits its size from this guy, which inherits its size from this guy, and if we change this dimension, this size here, all of these guys change their size. This is how we're making the thing responsive. So let me save, and we should get responsive images, or an image that conforms to the what was it, 500 pixels by 300 pixels. This image right now is not 500 by 3. Let me show you instead of just talking. So the viewport is larger, sometimes larger than the image. Let's do red. F5. And there we go. So that's the viewport, but the image maintains its aspect ratio, so it has to shrink below the viewport. If this image stretched to fill the viewport, you'd have a stretched vertically image. So let me keep that on, but let me comment that off. All right, so we have all the images on screen. Overflow. Currently, so the overflow is hidden, but you still can't, or you don't see all 3 images. That's because all of the images are stacked on top of one another here. Absolute. So this is the, I don't know, I think this is the first image, the second and third are just stacked underneath. So let's write a function that orders these cards. So the middle image stays here. The card to the left, or the first card, goes here. And the third card goes right here. And in order to do this, we need some references to these guys. These guys right here. Say ref is equal to ref underscore ID, arrow function. We'll call this one the viewport. And this one is just the images. Ref equals ref ID. Arrow function, this dot images is equal to, I forgot the equals there. I always forget that. Equals. No, equals ref underscore ID. All right, so let's go into the component did mount, and we'll write a function, or a function call first. So component did mount. We need to know 2 things. right off the bat. So two different variables. We'll do this dot number of cards by index, cards by index, not by the number starting at 1, starting at 0. So 3 cards, number of cards by index would be 2. We get that with this dot images dot children dot length minus 1. We now need to know the middle card by index. So this is card 1, card 2, card 3. What's the index of the middle card? In this case, it would be, let me write first and then I'll speak. It'll be, what are you doing, math.floor, and it's just going to be this dot number of cards by index divided by 2. So in our case, it's going to be, 2 divided by 2 is 1. So this is the 0 card, 1 card, which is the middle, which is perfect, and the 2 card. And these guys are indexes or indices, so 0, 1, 2. So we have number of cards by index, we have the middle card by index. Let's make a function call called order cards, and let's write that. Order cards, arrow function, don't need any sort of parameter listing. Let me write this function and then I'll explain it afterwards. So we're going to need, what are we going to need? Let's say the width of 1 card. So const card underscore width. We can get that with a parse float, get computed style of any card. So images dot children. We'll do 0, and is that proper bracketing? Yeah, here, width, there we go. And we need a counter for the right and a counter for the left. So counter for right starts at 1, GHT 1, and the counter for our left starts at the middle card by index. Let's create a loop and then order these cards, or move the cards so they're in order. So for let I is equal to 0, I is less than the images.children.length, thi plus plus. No. All right. No, not yet. Let's do this. This.images.children. Just in case you guys want to do some transitions in the CSS later, we're going to do this. Images children I. We'll do a style dot duration. Transition duration is equal to 0. Just so we don't get any overlapping transition durations. If we had a, let's say, I don't know, something else where we had to set this to like 1.5, when you first booted this up, or as you'll see when we call it in the resize listener, if this has a duration, you're going to see these cards order. You're going to see all the cards start here, and you're going to see the first card move here, and the third card move here. You want it to be instant for the user. So just to make sure, in case you guys do transitions later on, we're setting it to 0. Now we do our if conditional block. So if I is less than middle card by index, we know we're working with the left half of the deck. Else if I is greater than the middle card by index, we're working the right half of the deck. Else we know we're working with the exact middle card of the deck. And so let's move the left cards to the left and the right cards to the right. So this .images.children of I, style left. It's going to look confusing. I'll explain it in a moment. So we'll move left, so we want a negative value, and they're all in pixels. And it's going to be counter for left times the card width that we calculated minus the card width divided by 2. And of course we decrement the counter for left. Copy this logic, just reverse it for the right side of the deck. Want to move right, so we don't need the negative. We're using the counter for the right, not the left. And we are adding card width plus 2, and of course we're incrementing the counter for the right. And for this guy, paste. No, we don't need this, we don't need this. We just simply have a card width divided by 2. So let's save, see if it works, and then I will explain order cards. Save, go back, let's do an F5. That looks pretty good. Go back here. There we go. So the cards are ordered. 0, 1, 2. Middle card by index is 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And number of cards by index is 1, 2, 3, minus 1, which is 2. 0, 1, and 2. All right, so how is this working? I'm going to cut away to, because I've used this order cards function, I think 3 or 4 times in 3 or 4 different videos. I don't want to explain myself again, or just repeat myself again. So I'm going to cut away to a video I did where I explained how this function works. Now, that video was using JavaScript, not React.js, so the code's going to be slightly different. This uses this dot because we're in a class. The video I'm about to cut away to doesn't use this dot. It's in JavaScript, not JSX, but the logic is exactly the same. So once you guys have finished that video, we'll come back here and we're going to make this thing responsive. Currently, these images, they don't move or they don't shrink or grow according to the size of the browser. So after you guys are done viewing that cutout, that video, we'll come back and we'll fix the responsiveness of this slider. All right, so how is that the order cards function working? Let's say we have the stack of cards, the deck in the center, and for the sake of this example, we're going to do more than 3 cards, or the numbers are going to overlap. It's going to be really confusing. So let's say we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 5 cards, 0 through 4. The counter on the right starts at 1, so let me just say CR starts at 1, and the counter on the left here starts at the middle card by index, so it starts at 2 right here. So CL is equal to 2. How do we get these 2 cards to show up here and these 2 cards to show up here? Control Z, 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 Z. Z, there we go. So for the formula for the left, what we're saying is counter for left times new width. We'll explain this in a moment. This is a bit more complicated. We're just concentrating on these guys. Counter for left times width, and it's going to be a minus because we're moving in the left direction. And then counter for right times width. So let's deal with the left half first. So counter for left times the new width. Counter for left starts at 2. Let's say, for the sake of keeping it simple, 100 pixel widths. So 2 times 100 is 200. And then we decrement the counter for left. So what this says is for this card right here, starting here, move 200 pixels by to the left. So 100, 200. So that 0 card ends up here. And then we decrement the 2 to a 1 times 100 pixels to the left. So move 100 pixels. So this card here goes right here. The counter for the right is just the opposite. So start at 1 times 100 is equal to 100 pixels. So start from here. This card right here goes right here. Increment 1, so we get 2 by 100. We get the 200 pixels. So that goes here, 100, 200. So that gets thrown or moved over there. So that's how we're using these counters to shift all of the cards to the left, and all the cards to the right, to the right. What is that card width divided by 2 stuff? This guy right here. That has to do with this guy right here, this transform. And so visually, these cards look like they're in the middle of the screen. So let's say this is our screen right here. The cards look like they're here. Mathematically, they're not here. So let me do this. When we put a top 50%, left 50%, we're putting all of the cards right here. And then we apply the transformation, -50, -50, which drags the cards 50% on their X to the left and 50% on their Y up. So it repositions all of those cards to look like they're in the center. And because we transform them in the center, 50% of the width of a card, for this example, it's going to be 50 pixels. So all of these cards are shifted initially. They're not at 0, 0. They're not at a complete neutral position. They're offset by card width divided by 2. So all these cards have a 50 pixel deficit on the left side on their X. And we don't really care about the Y because we're not scrolling these images up. So we're just going to deal with the X. Let me draw that a bit neater. So all these cards have a 50, for example, a 50 pixel deficit in the, or surplus, as you'll see, in the X direction going to the left. That's why when we shift the cards here, down here, let's take in this whole calculation and see what we get. Let's go here. So what's 2 times 100? That's 200. But remember, we're already 50 pixels to the left. So already 50 pixels in the left direction. So we start here, 100, 200, and 50. So this card here, let me do this, 100, 200, 50. So this card right here is actually starting here. This is why we need to subtract that deficit from this calculation so that we can actually have, that's the 250. 250 minus 50 is 200. So the card actually now starts here. Same thing with this guy right here. Let me use a different color. 1 times 100 is 100. minus that 50 because we're moving in the left direction. What we get is 100 and then 150. We subtract that deficit and we get pushed back over here. And so this one card ends up where we want it to go. Same thing for the counter right. Let's do red here. Move just here. So remember, we're 50 pixels in the left direction. So what's 1 times 100? That's 100. Let's do this. So this guy right here, start here, 100, but we're 50 pixels in the left direction. So we go back 50 pixels. So this card starts here. We want it to start here, which is why we add 50 pixels to get rid of this guy right here. So that guy goes here. 2 times 100 is 200. So start here, use green, 100, 200, minus that 50 puts us back here, plus the 50 to take it away puts us right back here. So that 4 gets drawn right here. So that's what the new width divided by 2 is doing. It's just getting rid of this deficit or surplus depending on which direction we're going. That's why when we're on the middle card right here, you'd expect us to not transform it in any way. But the left of that middle card, let me stop that. The left of this middle card is actually at 50 for the purposes of transforming or navigating this carousel later on. We need this guy to be 0. That's why we need to add. So this guy's negative 50 in the left direction. We need to add 50 pixels right here, right there, in order to make it neutral, the 0 pixel value. So that's all these new widths divided by 2 are doing. And so that's what ordered cards, the function, is doing. Just taking the left half or treating the left half of the deck one certain way, and then treating the right half of the deck a different, just the opposite, the inverse way. Let's get back into the code. All right, so let's make this thing responsive. Let's do this. Let's partition our code. So, because we're going to write a lot of stuff, I don't want to get too confused. So let's do this. Let's do some commenting out. This is going to be the responsive code. Response. Okay, let's start with this. So we're just going to make these, you could modify this how you want in the end, but for this tutorial, we're just going to make the images always 50% of the width of the browser window. So let's hold that in a variable called let. We'll say image width as percentage. We will start at 50%. I'm going to write a line here. I'm going to comment it out throughout the video. I'm just going to leave it in there in the source code for you guys if you want to use it. It's going to be image width as a percentage is equal to, if the inner window width, so window.inner width, is less than 768, so if they do something like this, we want something like that, where the image takes up the full width of the window for mobile use or whatever you want to use. I'm just going to keep it in here for you guys. So if they shrink below 768, we want the image to have a 100% width. Else, just keep what we had. In this case, it's 50%. Let's comment that out. All right, so we have the image width as a percentage. Let's calculate what that is in terms of pixels. We could absolutely use, actually no we couldn't because all the math is based on percentages. Yeah, scratch that. So we're going to calculate what is 50%. We know the image wants to be 50% of the width of this window. What is that in a pixel value? In order to do that, we'll just say this dot new width is equal to, I'm just going to copy and paste some code that checks whether or not the user's on a desktop or a mobile device. So paste that. Again, just checks whether or not the user's on a Android, WebOS, iPhone, blah, 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 a mobile device. And so if they're on a mobile device, we want to take the image width as a percentage, divide by 100, so we get the actual decimal value. We don't want to multiply by 50. We want 50%, which is 0.5. So 50 divided by 100 is 0.5, so we get the decimal value. And we multiply that by window.screen.width. So that would be the width of this right here, if they were on mobile. For desktop, it's a bit different, you'll see. Width. Now, if they're on desktop, same formula, except we don't have a screen.width. We have the, inner width, like that. So we have the new width in pixels. If we modify the width of the viewport, as I said in the intro, because all of these guys derive from the viewport, they will change their size. So all we need to do to make this responsive is this. This.viewport.style.width is equal to that new denomination of pixels And that was this dot new width underscore width. We save, we F5 it, and these guys should, I don't know, grow or shrink, we'll see. All right, so that's 50%. Now notice this, they're still not resizing. Let me do this, let me do an F5 here, and they should be considerably smaller. They're still not resizing on the fly. It's because we're not running this logic here on the fly. So we're going to listen for them resizing, a resize event listener, run this logic, and these images will respond in real time. So let's do this. Order cards we'll keep here. Yeah, we'll keep it there. So window.add event listener, listen for a resize, and the exact same logic. So we'll just copy and paste it. Arrow function, there we go, including the order cards. Let's do a yank, let's do a paste. All right, let's save. We don't need the let because we defined it already. Let's comment it out. All right, save. Let's see what we get. Let's do an F5. All right, there we go. Now let's do this. Let me go see what it looks like without the overflow. Order cards, resize, order cards. All right, let's do an F5. All right, you're not seeing it here, but there's an error, not an error. There's a logic error in our code right now. This order cards function is based off of what? Like card width, right? And even though we get this on the fly, let's not duplicate variables unneeded. We have a new width, which is the responsive width. So instead of using this guy, calculating the width again, why don't we just use that new width? So here, let's do this. This dot new width. This dot new width. We'll say this dot new width. And this dot new width. And of course, this dot new width here. And since we're not using, I'll keep this in because it's good for the source code for the video for you guys. We'll keep that in, but we'll comment that out. So save, we'll go back. Let me turn off the overflow. Save, go back, F5 that. All right, so the images are responsive. There we go. Let me just show you this. Yeah, I'll show you when I do the buttons. Let's do the buttons now. So the left or previous navigation button, the right or next navigation button, and then we'll do those radio buttons on the bottom. And so let's do, how are we going to do this? Let's put them on screen first. We'll make them responsive after. So let's have a new container for those navigation buttons. We'll call this guy, and inside we'll have two images. Images? Yeah, they're images. Image, hashtag previous times 2. This guy's going to be, what did I name them? Left chevron and right chevron. So the first one is going to be left chevron, left dash chevron. .png, alt of previous. This is the right dash chevron, not devron, chevron.png, and this guy's next. And of course the ID for this guy would be next as well. Let's do some proper alignment. This guy's style is just going to be the, we'll call this nav styles.nav. Let me close this. We'll call it nav buttons container. These guys will have styles as well. Styles equal to, we'll call this one the styles.nav button. There we go. Let's code those guys up here. Let me save first. You can see it on the screen. Let me split screen this thing. There we go. All right, so the first guy was, and we're just going to center everything like we've been doing. So nav buttons container. And then we need, let me copy this, paste that here. This is just the nav button. All right, so let's do a, why am I doing that? I can just copy and paste. Let's copy this, paste that here. Let me scroll up just a bit. The width is going to be dynamic, but just for now, let's just do a 100 viewport width. Height we don't really care about. Delete that. Position absolute 50, 50, 50. Save. They should go somewhere around the middle. It's F5. well, the container's in the middle. In order to get these guys in the middle, we have to do a display of flex. Display of flex. Let's do an explicit flex direction of row. Let's do a justify content singular and space between, I think it was. Space between with an align items, and that was, what was it, center. We also want we don't want them to be able to click on the actual container, just the buttons. So pointer events for this guy will turn off. So none, and we'll make sure it's on top of the images. So Z index 9999. Save. There we go. These guys should be, there we go. Let's do, what are we doing next here? Display flex. Let's do this. A width of 2 items in this container always. So let's just say 50% of the width of the container. So each of them get 50% of the pie. Height, we'll just do, it's a div or an image. It's an image. We'll just do auto here. Auto, we want them to be able to click on it. So pointer events, we'll do all. And to show them that they're allowed to click on it, cursor with a pointer. Let's save, F5 that, and they should be on the sides here. Just like that. Okay, let's go into the code and make this thing responsive. 2 ways. The size of this needs to be responsive, and the placement, where they are, needs to be responsive. Let's do we need refs for that? We do need refs for these guys. Ref, and let me just do this for now. Ref is equal to, we'll call this guy ref underscore d. We'll say this dot nav buttons container is equal to ref underscore id. We're going to make these responsive in their size, so we need some refs for these guys as well. Ref underscore id, arrow function, this dot, let's say button previous. And of course this guy is next. Alright, let's make them responsive in their size first. And their size is going to be relative to the size of the viewport, something consistent. So everything in this entire slideshow carousel thing is sized relative to this guy. We change this guy, we change everything in this carousel. So let's start with the size, and we'll do it here. So this dot, start the button previous dot style dot width, and it's relative to the viewport. So it's going to be in pixels. And just to maintain the philosophy that it's 50% of the flex container, we're going to do this. You don't need to do this because you can always just use a different decimal number. But just to maintain the philosophy of this thing, each of these buttons, they're sized relative to half of the viewport, just like they take up half of the flex container. Button previous, again, you don't have to do that. 0.3. If you didn't do that, you just have to multiply by a smaller decimal number. Paste this. Let's do, as long as it was sized relative to the viewport. Next. 30%. I think it was 30%. Let's save, see what we get. Let's do an F5. This should shrink considerably. And style of undefined. What are we doing here? 32. Button previous. Style width. Did I not do equals? I keep forgetting that. Equals ref underscore id. And equals ref underscore id. Save. Let's do an F5. And there we go. So they're sized relative to the viewport. If you go small, actually, they're not going to do dynamic because we haven't put that in the listener. Copy these 2 lines. Place them in the resize listener. Save, go back, F5. And now when we dynamically move the size of the browser, these guys will, these images are white on the white. There we go. They dynamically resize relative to the viewport. Let's make these guys, their position, size relative to this one won't be relative to the viewport. This one will be relative to the purely the window, the browser window, just like the images are. So let me just show you. Exact same logic as this stuff here. So let's do a separate variable for that. Let's do a let for this one. Let nav buttons, we'll say placement as percentage. So placement as percentage, like that. We'll do a 60%, and we'll do the exact same logic for this guy. So let me copy this, paste that here, and replace these with nav buttons placement as a percentage, and nav placement buttons as a percentage. Let me comment that out. So let's use that guy right here. So this dot nav buttons placement, nav buttons container, excuse me, style width, and this guy will be not pixels. It's gonna be relative to the viewport. So you can think of it as a percentage, direct percentage. So viewport width and nav percentage. Let's copy this line and put it in the listener. Paste that there, copy these two lines, paste those down here. We don't need the let. We need the N. Format, save. Let's do an F5, and those guys should show up around here. There we go. So no matter where we go, it's 60% of the width of the window. Let's, before we get to the radio buttons, let me show you these guys on then. On, save, F5. If we're above 768, we're at that 60% mark. And let's do this as well. Save, F5 as well. And then we'll get to putting the buttons on the bottom here. So 60%, less than 768, and we snap to 100% of the width of the window. So let's do the selection buttons. We're going to need a container just like we had a container for the nav buttons. What am I thinking here? Let's turn these guys off. Off, and off. All right, set up the container for this guy. So div, and this guy is going to have, what's going to have? We're going to do it programmatically, but for now we're going to hard code one of these buttons so you guys can see it transform. So div here as well. This guy is going to have a style of styles dot. What do we say that other one? Nav buttons. We'll say selection buttons for this one. Buttons container, and each button has a style of. Let's say styles dot selection button. All right, let's go side by side and code this up. Style selection buttons container. Let's go here. Right side. Let me F5 this. There we go. All right, let's do these guys. Nav button here. So this guy's going to be selection buttons container empty object. Let's do a copy, paste. Let's scroll up a bit. And this guy's just the selection button. Let's do the selection button for now, whatever. Do this. So you guys can see it transform. Let me do this. Background color, RGBA 00255, 0.4. All right, margin, those should be commas. Like that, that'll be the last guy. All right, margin, 0, padding, same thing. Let's do a width of 100 viewport width. Again, programmatically, we'll do it responsive, but just so you guys can see something. A height, it's going to be fit content later. Just a spoiler. Height, we'll do 20 pixels for this. We'll say we should get something up top here. F5, do I need to F5? There we go. So that's the container for those radio buttons. Width, height, let's bring that guy, fix it on the bottom of the viewport. Let me do this. Now this is where your own coding is going to take hold when I show you this. Where you have to tailor to your use case. All right, pointer events, not height right here. So position of absolute. Absolute. We'll say a bottom of 0. This is how we're going to fix it to the bottom of the viewport. Left of 50%. And pay attention to where the blue box goes when I save it here. Save, F5. Should go right here. There we go. Let's make sure this is centered. So we're going to take it to the left or translate it 50% to the left, but not the Y. We've been doing the Y here. This is the X, and this is the Y. This is the X, and this is the Y. We just want the X value. So left, we'll do a transform. We'll do a translate of X, negative 50%. That should center it. Let me F5 that. And just like these buttons here, we're going to turn off the pointer events for the container. We're going to turn on the pointer events for the actual buttons. Let me code a button so you guys can see it. Let's do a width of 20 pixels. Height of the same. Paste height. Let's do a background color of gray. Let's do a pointer events of all. And we'll do a pointer of cursor. Pointer cursor. Pointer events for this guy. none. And what else did we need? Pointer events, Z index. So they're on top of everything. Z index 9999. Save, F5. That radio button should be right here with the center using flex. There we go. So that's the radio button. I forgot the border radius to make it an actual circle, 50%. Let's center these radio buttons. So we'll do that here. We'll do display of flex, an explicit flex direction of row. And we'll do a justify content center, like this. And we'll do align items center as well. That should bring this guy in here to the center of the center of that container. There we go. So let's fix this guy to the bottom of the viewport. Let's do that in the code. And I'm going to show you why you're going to have to tailor this to your use case. Let's go full screen for these guys. F5, full screen. We need some refs for these guys, just for the container. Ref equals ref underscore ID arrow function. This dot will say selection buttons container is equal to ref underscore ID. So again, two ways of making this responsive, the placement and the size of these guys. Let's start with the placement. So we're going to fix it to the bottom of the viewport. Notice the viewport is in harmony with the image, but if we do this, there we go. The viewport's here. If you fix this radio button or your radio buttons to the bottom of the image, because this carousel can take any size of image, let me modify this one like this. It's 752. If you fix this radio button to the bottom of the image, it'll be right here for this one, but when they go to the next one, it'll be right here. So you're going to get this effect where this radio button or the radio buttons, they go up, down, here, 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 and they're constantly moving. It looks unprofessional, so I'll leave you guys to solve that for yourself, but for this video, we're just going to fix it to the bottom of the viewport. Because no matter what size the image is, the viewport for each image is exactly the same. So to do that, we have a bottom variable. We'll do it here. Before the order cards or after? We'll do it before. Before or after, doesn't really matter. We'll do it here. This dot, and that was the selection buttons container, dot style dot bottom. And it's just going to be like this. It's going to look kind of weird. I'll explain after. PX. Do we need a parse float? We don't. So the viewport has a get bounding client rect, and it has a top value. Yeah, 5 this. All right, so the bottom is the top. What does that mean? Well, this is the viewport right here. This distance here is the top. We're just setting the bottom, where this guy starts at the bottom, to be this distance. Don't think of it as the top. Just think of this distance here. From the bottom, repeat this distance. So start here and just move up here. This is how we're fixing it to the bottom of the viewport, like that. Let's put this guy in the resize listener. And because we have an actual bottom, do we need to modify the code now? Where are we? Bottom 0, you can stay there. Left, you can stay. Width, height, we have those things in there. So let me just do this now. Because you saw how we were changing it in content. And height, let's say same thing. Doesn't really matter. Because you're not going to see this container. It's a flex. It's going to flex. Just think of what we don't need so we don't have any redundant code. Margin, padding, height, width, position, bottom left. Displays are good. All right, looks good. Background color we'll keep for the tutorial. All right, so let's get these guys sizing relative to the viewport width. And so right here we're going to need a loop. Actually, before we do that, let's add more than one. So to add these guys more than one, we're just going to loop through the cards. So we have 3 cards, we need 3 buttons. So we'll do a this.state.cards.for each. And they're going to be in a list, so they're going to need a key. So let me just do this. Underscore, we need the index just to make a unique key. Arrow function. Actually, it's not for each, excuse me. I'm going to return an actual array, so we're going to map through it. Cards.map. Same thing though, underscore, we need the index. Okay. Don't need semicolon here, we're just going to return this bad boy here. And paste. Let's delete this. And a unique key for these guys. Key is equal to I. Style, selection button, save. Let me go back here, F5. We should get 3 buttons here. 1, 2, 3. Let's space them out. So we're just going to do that with the margin. So we're going to go down here. And since these guys have a width, they don't have a width and height yet. Margin, we'll do here. That's for this. Padding 0. The margin of, and let's say 0 on the top. We'll do 15 for the right, 0 on the bottom, 0 on the left, like that. See what that looks like. F5. These guys should space out. And they're not spacing out. Why is that? 0, 15, 0, 0, padding 0. Let's do this. Inspect. What do we have here? Margin. There's no margin here. Why is there no margin? Let me see if I add it here. Margin dash right. And 15 pixels. Yeah, it should be there. Selection underscore button. Do they have the right class? Style selection underscore button. That should be working. Let me have F5 one more time. Margin 0, 15. Let me just try margin right then. Margin right, and we'll say 15 pixels. Save, go back, F5. And do we have it? There we go. We'll just do margin right. All right, let's make these guys responsive in their size. Really simple, relative to the viewport. And we'll use 5% of the viewport. And we're not going to do the divided by business. So we'll do it here. We'll loop through all of them. So for let I is equal to 0, I is less than images.children.length. That should be a this right here. This.images children length. We'll do an I++. We're almost there, and then we get to do the actual coding. Just making everything responsive. Let's do, what are we doing here? This.selection buttons container.children of I. And let's do that same, actually no. Do you want to do that way? Yeah, let's do that same thing. So transition duration, in case you guys want to animate these using transitions. Let's make sure we have a transition duration of 0. All right, copy paste. Let's modify the width and the height. So width, style.width. And it's just going to be equal to a pixel denomination based on the viewport. So what is it going to be? This.new width, and we'll say times 0.05%. Same thing for the height, so we have a perfect circle. And let's move this code into the listener. Resize here and here. Okay, 5% style width. Let's save, see what we get. Let's F5 this bad boy. Let me turn off the viewport as well. It gets distracting. F5. No matter where we go, these guys should resize. We go larger, these guys should go larger. There we go. And let me change the image size. Looks kind of weird. Let's go back to 352, F5. And here we go. Smaller, 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 smaller. And again, for your use case, you need to, you might want to do, like, if the window.inner width is lower than this, you might want to place these slightly higher, depending on what you want to do. Just you can't write one code to fit all use cases. I found this to be the best use case, fixing them to the end of the viewport. All right, so these buttons are responsive. The images are responsive. These buttons are responsive. Let me show, we have to test out the mobile. We haven't done mobile yet. Let's go back here. Let's do a Control-0. Now notice this. Let me do F5 for good luck. Now notice, well, you'll see it. Watch this. See how it's doing that? This is nothing, as far as I've seen, it has nothing to do with the actual, I've tested this on a phone. It has nothing to do with the actual mobile version. It's just the way the browser handles resizing dynamically the mobile landscape or canvas. It just magnifies things. It's like acting like it's pinch zooming. And so let's do this. See how it's off screen. If you just do a Control-0 to go back to 100% magnification, it just recenters everything. So even if you click this, go off center, Control 0. So I don't think it has anything to do with the actual mobile version of this thing. It just has to do with how the browser's handling this this action right now. Control 0, back to center. All right, so this thing's fully responsive. Let's go back to desktop. This thing is fully responsive. Let's move on to coding the functionality. We'll start with these buttons. We'll move to these buttons, and then we'll get to the autoplay function if you want to turn that option on. Okay, so to make this thing actually move, let's start with the buttons. So we need a variable called scroll in progress. You'll see why when I use it. Scroll in progress. I'm not going to write all of the code for the logic. Let me falter. I'm not going to write all the code for the logic in here. The component did mount function is getting a little long. So we're just going to do this. We're going to write it outside of here. And we're going to use on clicks for these guys. Let's do the on clicks after. We'll do it before, whatever. Doesn't really matter. On click, we're going to say equals handle previous. And this guy's going to be the on click equals this dot handle next, like that. All right, let's write these two guys. Order cards, we'll do it after the order cards. Handle previous, we'll do handle next first, and then we'll just copy and paste the code. Okay, so handle next. Let's do, what should we do here? Let's start a loop. Let's go for let I is equal to 0. I is less than, we're just going to move all of the images to the so when they click next, we actually want to move all the images to the left. So images, children, length, THI++. Okay. Handle next, and let's do, again, let's just, in case you guys future-proof this, in case you guys have transition durations, let's do this just to make sure. Run the 0. All right, so we need to know where we're heading. So what's the updated position? Where do we move the images to? Well, we need to know where they are to start with, and so let's keep track of that in an array. So let's go back up here, and we're going to have an array called this.last positions. This is where the images are last, the last position. Let's fill these guys up quickly. So for let I is equal to 0, I is less than the this.images children. The length, we'll do an I++, and we'll just push the values into that array. This.last positions, .push, do a parse float. And let's do this .images children I and .style.left. So we have where they are. How do we know where to go? When we click next or previous, we just want to go to the next card. Yeah, I didn't fill this up. We just want to go to the next card. So we just want to move one whole card width over. So the updated position is just going to be, where's the image now? That's where the image is now. We want to move the cards to the left, so we'll do a minus or negative. One whole card width, like that. And so we have the updated position. Now we just need to move the card and keep track of the position where we moved it into the last positions array. So 2 lines here. We'll do this.images children I.style.left and give me the updated position, and of course update the last position where you are, equals updated position. All right, let's save and see what we get. Let's do an F5. I click this, all the images should shift to the left, so this deer here should go in the middle. There we go. Now notice it's not wrapping around. If I just keep clicking, it doesn't wrap around. Let's implement that logic first, complete the next listener, and just copy and paste and reverse the logic for the previous. So let me F5. All right, so how do we know when, or what's the logic of wrapping around? Well, there's 2 imaginary boundaries. There's a boundary on the left, a boundary on the right. When this card here crosses or touches that boundary, we want this card to pop at the end of the deck, or pop over to the end of the deck. Same thing here. There's a right boundary here. When this card crosses or touches that boundary, we want to take this last card and put it to the front of the deck. And so we need to calculate the left boundary, the right boundary, and then we'll write a function to do that sort of popping. Like take this card, put it here, or take this card and put it here. So the right boundary and left boundary. And let me do this. Since all of these guys use the last positions and that boundary, let me take it out of those comments here, put it here. Yeah, it's better. All right, so let's do a right boundary and a left boundary. Start with the left, right boundary, whatever. Doesn't matter. So right boundary, what is it? Parse float. We'll say, well, it's just where's this card plus one more card. So when this guy moves over one more card, we know that it's crossed or touched the boundary, so move it back to the front of the pack. Same thing with this guy. It's where this card, the left boundary, is where this card is, minus one card width. So when this guy becomes that card over here, we know it's kind of out of bounds. Take that card and put it at the end of our carousel. Parse float, we'll do this, .images.children. And this is the last card. So this .number of cards by index. And we'll say .style.left and plus a new width. And for the right boundary, the left boundary, it's the same thing, just reverse the logic. Left boundary. Let's take this guy away, 3CIW, we'll do 0, and this is a negative. So we have the left boundary, the right boundary. Let's create a handle boundaries function. Let me call that, because I always forget to call these, and then it just blows up. So let me call that here, this .handle boundaries, like that. All right, so let's write this guy here. Handle boundaries, arrow function, let me scroll up. All right, so how are we going to handle the boundaries? Let's do the left boundary first, because when you click the next button, all these cards move to the left. When this guy moves to the left past that boundary, when I take this card, put it over here. And so we'll say if that first card, so this guy right here, so you're in the last positions, that's your position. If you are less than or equal to the left boundary, we know to move you over to the end of the deck. So let's calculate the end of deck. End of deck is equal to, where's this last card? The last card's at this number of cards by index. Again, number of cards by index is 0, 1, 2. So we can use that as a variable, a shortcut to get this last card by index. And we know the end of the deck, we want to place it one card width over. New width. All right, let's move this card. So let me just copy this instead of writing it. So we want to move the first card to the end of the deck and update its value in the last positions array. And then I need to show you guys something important. This guy should be end of deck. All right, let's see if this works. Save. We will go back to an F5. I click the next button, this card, whatever it is, looks like a sky or whatever. It should go over to the right side here. So I click this, there we go. I click again. Now what's happening here? Let me F5 and show you guys the HTML tree. All right, let's go to the elements. Let's go, I did the div, where am I? We need to go, where are we? Div root, style, this guy here. This guy is the viewport. It has all the cards, perfect. Let me do this. Control plus this stuff. Plus one more time. All right. Pay attention to, is there an ID here? I should have put an ID. Yeah, ID 1, ID 2, ID 3. Pay attention to this. So let me just do, let's go like this. And give me this back. All right, so 1, so this guy's right here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Watch when I click next. I click next. Actually, didn't resize. We'll get to why it didn't happen in a second. So let me F5 and do that again. So 1, 2, 3. Let's go next. Now, this is the second card, third card. That's the first card. So it should be 2, 3, 1. Check out the HTML. Let's go here. Let's go here, here. There we go. It's still 1, 2, 3. And so all this code here did is it changed it visually here. So it's 2, 3, 1. It didn't go into the HTML and reorder the actual tree. We need to do that manually. We also need to reorder the last positions. The first item in that last positions array is this guy right here, but this guy's the third card. So we need to take the third position of the last positions array, the first position in the last positions array, and move it to the end. We just need to move these guys in the actual substance of the code, not just visually. And before I do that, let me before I forget, Why does this screw up? Let me just do this a couple of times. Let's go next. And why does this screw up? Why does the alignment? Let me do this. Let me just do this a couple of times. Let's go next. Why is that screwing up? Well, when we resize the browser, the left boundary and the right boundary change. We have to actually account for that in the resize listener. So before we get into the moving the HTML, let's do that. Right here, we declare the left boundary, right boundary, and we make sure we're keeping up where the images are. We have to put that in the resize listener right here. We'll do that after the order cards. Alt F, and of course we're not pushing in new values, we're just updating the old values. So I is equal to that parse float business. Let's save, let's go back, F5 that. Let's move around a bit, and we'll click the next, and it should work. Can I get that? There we go. Let's move around a bit, let's do that. Click next, and it works perfectly. All right, let's get the this guy actually having that infinite loop. So in the handle boundaries, right here, after we're done visually moving the cards, we have to go into the HTML and move it. Let's do the HTML first, then the last positions. So this .images, we want to take the first card and attach it to the end. So we'll do append child. We're going to take the first card, images.children 0, and attach it to the end. So after the last card, images, children, and this number of cards by index. And let's take the first element out of the array and attach it to the end. So this dot, the array was what? Last positions. Splice, where do you want to start? Let's start at the end of the array. How many places past that? 0, so right at the end. What do you want to put at the end? Well, we want to put the first element of your array. So to take the first element out of an array, we just use the shift method. So last positions dot shift like that. All right. Save, go back and see if we got that right. If we got that right, we're just going to copy and paste and reverse the logic for the previous button. All right, good, perfect. And notice this. Let me try and span this as fast as possible. Notice I can go that quick. Let's prevent the user from going that quick. Just slow it down just a bit. That was the scroll in progress. So right here, we're going to say, I don't need that. We're going to say if there is a scroll in progress, we're going to return. Don't allow them to click the button. Now, if there isn't, we're going to set the scroll in progress to true. So let them move the carousel. And then we're going to wait a few milliseconds and then allow them to click it again. So do a set timeout. Set timeout. I think we'll wait 200. We'll see what that feels like. 200. And scroll in progress. Set that back to false. Equals false. There we go. Let's save. Go back. F5 this. Let me spam this button again. All right, here we go. All right, that feels better. All right, so let's just copy this and reverse the logic for the previous. Actually, let's do this first then. Let's copy this and reverse the logic for the boundary on the right. So if the last card, this number of cards by index, is greater than or equal to the right boundary, we want to calculate the beginning of the deck. Beginning of deck. Beginning of deck is just where's the first card, minus 1 width. We move the last card, so this number of cards, to the beginning of the deck. We make sure to update its position, or its value, not its position, its value in the last positions array. Cards by index, that's the beginning of deck. And then we go into the HTML and we move the last card, number of cards by index, in front of the first card. And we don't append, we insert before. Insert before, we splice into the first index, moving 0. We want to take off the last element of an array, so we pop it off like that. Let's copy the handle next, reverse the logic for our previous, and then we'll move on to the selection buttons. Handle next, 2DD, space there. Let's do a previous. All right, that stays the same. We want to move the carousel to the right when we click previous, so this needs to be a plus. This is the same. Save. Let's see if it works. F5. And if it works, we'll move on to this. Actually, if it works, we'll light these things up, and then we'll move on to the functionality of these buttons. Let's go next. So this Ferris wheel should be the center card. Good. Next again. Good. Let's go back. Good. Previous. Next. All right, let's light these guys up. In order to do that, we're just going to keep track of which card they're on. So for that, we'll have a new variable. We'll call it the current card right up here. This is .current card. And the current card, because of the logic of this, the way this thing works, it's going to be the middle card by index. So when this thing first boots up, the middle card is always going to be the center card. But for when you use this in reality, you don't want to have to calculate where to put the first image of your carousel in the middle. So at the end of this tutorial, we'll make sure it starts at the first card. But just for now, it starts at the second card because of the logic of how this works. And so we're going to start the button being colored here at the center button here. So the current card is just the middle card by index, which is 0, 1. Let's write a function that lights up these buttons based on what the current card is. So let's go, where should we write it? Order cards, handle boundaries, handle next. Let's write it up here. Let's call this one update selection. Update selection, arrow function. Very easy. Let me just do an if here. If I is equal to this .current card, we know we're on the active card, else we're not on the active card. Now, for now, we're just going to have, we should have a for loop here, for let I. For now, we're just going to have one line of code here, children.length. One line of code. We're just going to change the color, but I'll leave it in the code how to make these guys light up like in the preview for this tutorial. It's just a simple box shadow. So if I is equal to the current card, we know we're on the active card. So we're just going to do this, .images, children, not images, excuse me. Selections, buttons, container, .children, I, and we're just going to modify the background color, and we'll make it red. For this guy, we're just going to keep gray. All right, so let's call this function. We update the selection after we order the cards here. Yeah, we can call it here. Order the cards and then update selection. Save, go back, F5. This guy should be the lit up one. And cannot read properties, style of undefined. Why is that? Where did we have the for let I 0? Oh, I didn't even have. You need the I here, guys. I is less than. There we go. That's a weird thing. Let's refresh, and the middle guy should be the. There we go. All right, let's go next. Now notice this guy's not moving. Let's code for that, and then we'll get to the actual clicking of these guys. And these guys should be cursors. Let me go into the. Did I not put that? Pointer cursor, Z index, selection button. They should be cursors, selection button. Do I not have the styles for that guy? Style, selection, underscore button. Should be cursors. Let's just do this one more 9 just to see what's going on there. Let's go 999. Save, go back, F5. This cursor should point to a pointer. Pointer cursor. All right, we'll get to that. We'll fix that. Let's code up the, so every time we click the next, we want the current card to increase. Previous, current card to decrease. So let's go here first. Handle boundaries, we'll do it before the handle boundaries. So this .current card. Now, if the current card is equal to the last card, if we're on the last card, we can't go to the next card. There's no next card, so we need to go back to the first card here. So if number of cards by index, if that's true, we just want to go to the first card. Else, we'll just increase this .current card. Let's copy this logic and just reverse it for the handle previous. Paste, space. If it is the first card, we can't go to -1. So we just want to go to the last card. Else, we'll just do a minus. Save, go back. We'll do, actually, it's not going to update because we didn't call the function. Update selection. There we go. Copy and paste, save, go back, F5, and this should be working. But these guys are not pointers for some reason. There we go. Previous, all right. Let's go to the code here before we go into the actual code to see what's going on with these. What are your styles? Pointer. Why isn't the cursor going to cursor? And that's there. Why is that unknown property name? Pointer, cursor. It's not the cursor pointer. Oh my lord. Wrong dyslexia, guys. It's not pointer cursor, it's cursor pointer. Cursor pointer. There we go. Let's go back down here. Give me this. There we go. All right. So let's code up the listener for this guy and make these guys move, and then we'll do the autoplay stuff. We will do that. You know what? We have these partitions. Let's partition here as well. Copy this. Handle boundaries, handle next. These guys are the buttons. Let's go here, delete that. Give me the bottom boundary, handle previous. Put that here. Format, we get handle button navigation, selection navigation. There's no unique variables that we need here. So let me take this out of here. But there is a function we want to call here. So we'll do that here. And the autoplay code, there are unique variables for that. So I'll keep that one here, but we'll copy this and paste it down here as well. And that was the autoplay code. All right, selection navigation, another click listener. But instead of the individual ones here, we're just going to have a parent click. So no matter which one we click here, it's going to register because we clicked the parent, the selection buttons container. So let's do an on click. On click equals, and this dot handle selection like that. We don't have an handle selection, do we? We have an update selection. Yeah, good. We'll do that right here. So handle selections equal to, do we need the event? We need the event so we know which one to read. Event. There we go. We don't need the parentheses. All right, so first things first, when we click on this, any button here, or even the container, it's going to register a click. We don't care if they click the container. So if they click the container, we're just going to return out of this this function. How we check for that is this. So if the thing they clicked, event.target, target, is equal to this dot selections buttons container, just return. Don't do any of the logic. Else we're actually in here. Now this guy right here is not an array, so we can't really loop. We're going to loop through, but we have to use a different way of looping through to see which button they click. These guys are not, they're 0, 1, 2, but you can't just use something like this. You can't just do this dot selections button created for each. It's not an array. So we're going to loop through first like this. We're going to say let new underscore card equal null. Equal null. We're going to loop through first to see which one of these guys they clicked. So for let I is equal to 0. I is less than this dot images dot children dot length I plus plus. All we're going to say is if that I is equal if event dot target. So what did they click in the box? If that's equal to one of those children, this dot selection buttons dynamic container children of I, then we know the new card is equal to that index, is equal to I like that. And so we have this should be new card. Why, there we go. So we have which one of these they clicked, 0, 1, or 2. Let's move this carousel to that place. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, another loop. What's the updated position going to be? So we have some sort of updated position. We know it's where are they now, so last positions. What's the formula? What are we adding to this? Well, let me go over to Paint and explain it through drawing. How do we know how many cards to move over? Let's say we have, so let's say this is card 0. That's way too, let's do this brush size large. Card 0, card 1 by index. So card 1, 2, 3, but index 0, 1, 2. So our current card is right here. Let's say the current card is right here. That's an index of 1. Let's say we want to move, or we click on this button right here. That's an index of 2. How do we know to move one card? We're going next, but the cards shift to the left. How do we know to move one card over to the left? One card width over to the left? Well, what is the current card? 1 minus the new card that we want, 2. Well, that's going to be equal to 1 minus 2 is -1. What is -1 times, let's just say for this example, the width of one card is 500 pixels. What is -1 times 500? What's -500? So what happens if we move in the negative direction, so left, 500 pixels? Well, this card right here becomes this card right here. Let's just say, for the sake of example, we want the other card. So that's the formula, by the way. So let's say that's our current card right here. This is the new card they want. What is the current card minus the new card? And this new card is an index of 0. What's 1 minus 0? What's 1? What's 1 times 500, which is one width of a card? What's 500? Positive. So move in the positive direction, and this card becomes the active card. So this is the formula here, guys. The current card minus the new card times the card width. And so we have where you start plus that formula. Current card minus the new card and times the width of a card. There we go. Let's move the guys. So images, children, I, style.left. And again, just to be, I think I'm going to miss some of them, so just be careful. If you add transitions, manual or custom transitions, just to be clear, let's make a duration of 0. Style left is equal to that updated position in pixels. So updated position, we update the last positions array is equal to the updated position, and we increase because we moved that card over. We say the current card is now equal to the new card, and of course we update the selection. And why is it doing that? Card is equal, that's a minus, it's unequal. There we go. And we update the selection. There we go. Let's see what we get. Let's save, and let me add one more card. I'm going to show you guys something's going to screw up. Let's do one more card here. Copy, paste, comma, this guy will be 4. See, it'll be 4. This guy will be 4 and a different dimension, I don't know, 4. All right, let's go back down to that function, the handle selection function. Right here. Save, let's go back. Not to that, we can delete. Let me keep that open. I want to show you guys something. All right, let's go almost full screen. Let's do an F5. We have 4 little radio buttons. This is index 0 or card 2. Let's go to the card 3. And it didn't shift. Why didn't it shift? Handle selection. Where are we at? Handle selection. This dot handle selection. Where are we at here? Let event new target click. And so why isn't it working? Last positions, what are we doing here? New card, so we got the new card. Let I, updated position, see last positions, new card. Oh, we're doing I here. We need to know the last position of the current card in the loop. Save, go back, let's do an F5. And let's go to the third card, or 01 second index. There we go. Let's go to the fourth one. Let's go to the third one. Let's go to the first one. Let's click this button here. See what happens. All right. Let's go next. I'm trying to make this thing break a certain way. Let's go to the fourth one. There we go. I broke it. Now what's happening? Why did this thing break? Well, when we do this, let me Control N this stuff. Don't save. So let's say for example, here we have 4 cards. Like that. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 cards. The left boundary is here. The right boundary is here. That's one whole card width over. One whole card width over. Let's say we went from let's say we had this card here. We went from this card to this card. And so we move the carousel 1, 2 cards over, maybe even 3. Well, these images here, to get this guy to show up here, these two have to move here. So this guy moves here, and this guy moves here, touching the boundary. Remember, if it's equal to or greater than, or in this case, it'd be less than or equal to the left boundary. So if it's past the left boundary or it touches the left boundary. So these two guys are out of bounds. We never called the handle boundaries function here. So these guys aren't being moved to the end of the deck. And so we have to call the handle boundaries to take care of these. And so we need to call the handle boundaries function to take care of these cards, but we need to call it twice, once for each card. If we just call it once, it's just going to take one of these, and this guy's going to be out of position, and it's going to screw up again. So how do we know how many cards we moved over? Well, let's say this is 0. 0, 1, 2, 3, 3. What's 0 minus 3? That's -3. So why don't we just call the handle boundaries math.absolute? So we don't want to have a negative, right? You can't call something negative 3 times, just a positive 3 times. It's going to call it 3 times. It's going to take care of these cards. The third time is just going to call something, and there's not going to be anything there. So we're in a safe place if we just do, because I don't want to do new math. Just take the current card minus the new card, call the boundaries or handle boundaries that many times. So let's do that here. We'll say for let I is equal to 0. And what did we determine? I is less than. Actually, it might work then. No. It's going to be math.absolute, current card minus the new card. I++, and just take care of all of the cards that are out of bounds. Okay, let's save, go back. Let me try and break the carousel again. I forget the exact combination I use. Alright, so let's go 4. I think I did 1, I did 4, I don't know what I did. Anyways, it's just going to work perfectly. So no matter what we do, we skip cards, we go over here. All the cards that are out of bounds get put in their exact positions. This thing's perfectly responsive. There we go. There we go. It's not breaking, not breaking. Let's do a mobile version, and then we'll get the auto. Let me Control 0 to center it. Let's go next. Let's go. So that's the pinch zooming thing. Clicking too fast. Or previous, next. Let's go 1, 4. Can we break it? We can't break it. All right, let's code up the auto play function if you guys want to use it. So for that, we're gonna need 2 variables. I'm trying to think if I missed anything in this handle selection. I don't think I did. All right, let's go here. We're gonna need 2 timers. The first one's gonna be a timeout timer. We'll call that the autoplay. Autoplay timeout. Timeout ID is equal to null. And we're going to have an interval. This dot autoplay, and this is going to be the interval ID. Interval ID, and that's going to be equal to null as well. Let's go down here and code that guy up. We'll code it in a function. That function we'll just call start autoplay. Autoplay arrow function. First things that's going to happen when you call it, it's going to clear any timers going off, any sort of autoplay. So it's going to do a clear timeout of this dot autoplay timeout ID. Same thing for the interval, clear interval, and this dot autoplay interval ID. All right, let's get the timers working. So set timeout. That's this dot autoplay set timeout, or autoplay timeout ID. Set timeout. And we're going to wait. You can play around with the timings. 1200 milliseconds. After 1200 milliseconds, start the actual clicking or the autoplay feature. So this dot autoplay interval is equal to set interval. Set interval. There we go. And this guy's just going to tick every 1100 seconds. And how do we tick? Well, we just want to go right. So we want the images to go left, which is to say just the logic of this button. So let's go to the handle next. And we'll take this guy, including the current card, incrementation, handle boundaries, update selection we need. Yeah. So we'll copy these. we'll go down here into our interval, paste, and get rid of these spaces here. Alt F, we'll save, and we need to call this guy. Let's do this. So again, this is completely up to you how you want to structure the logic of this. When they click the next and previous buttons, they're going to click. After a certain amount of time, we'll call the start autoplay. Autoplay like that. And let's copy this, put it in here. And when they click the buttons, we'll also do that. We'll paste it here. Now watch this. Again, you have to play around the logics, how you want yours to work, but we save, we go back. Let me just do this. Overflow off. Get this thing looking proper. Is there a blue there? There is a blue there. Where is that? Right here. Let's save. Let's go back. We can do F5. All right, so right now, autoplay is not turned on, so it's static. You might want to code it so where it starts automatically. So let's click next, 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 next. Let's stop. And we wait 1200 milliseconds and it starts. We interrupt that. We go next or previous. It doesn't autoplay because we're clicking on the button. We stop and we wait. There we go. Let's go back to the first card. It doesn't autoplay because we keep clicking, and it calls the autoplay function. But because we have the clear timeout and clear intervals, it doesn't actually execute the timeout, the set timeout. We stop, and it should go. All right, let's go at F5. How do we get this guy to start at the first image? Well, we have the logic for it. We could code it separately, or we can just click this button here. And again, this is where you're going to have to customize the code. Because we have, well, let me just show you here. Let's go up here. Component did mount. Window resize listener. All these guys here. Let's do this. Let's call this the init code. There we go. Let me copy this. So we're just going to manually, or programmatically, click that button. So selections button container, children. It's the first image. .click. There we go. And because we have the logic here, right here, when we programmatically click this button up here, right here, it's going to automatically start the carousel here. You might not want to have that. You're going to have to figure that out on your own. So let me save this. Let's go back. Let's F5 this. It should start here. We wait 1200 milliseconds, and then it's going to start automatically like that. We can click, interrupt that autoplay option. We stop, we wait, and it should go. No matter what we do with the size thing here, it just automatically does that. Now, I'm not going to show you how to make these things light up. That would just be, again, I think 2 more lines of code, but this thing is long enough. This video tutorial is long enough. It'd just be here. You could add whatever stylings you want for the active radio button and the non-active radio buttons. And so I think that's going to be it. Let's go mobile before I leave you guys. Let's go here. Let's do an F5. There we go. Yeah, so it's going to be it. All right, so don't forget to leave a like. It helps the channel grow. Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. And I will see you guys in the next one.